Unreasonable, you should check it out. It's an extraordinary and personal account of his journey from childhood through his successes in life and challenges in life. And Eli, I want to start with you. You say in your book that persistence, in this case you were talking about the Broad Museum, you say persistence is often unreasonable. And you have persisted a lot in life, persisted to this moment, to this great museum. Can you give us a sense of the importance of hanging in there?
You know, this term, unreasonable, came about because after I was married several years to Edie, she gave me a plaque by George Bernard Shaw that essentially said, "The reasonable man adapts himself to the world. The unreasonable one doesn't. Therefore, all progress comes from unreasonable people." So I was happy to write the book and say there's an art of being unreasonable.
And Zaha Hadid, you referred to this earlier in your talk, that reporters and so forth often ask you how you got from here to there, and we know it was an airplane, yes. But your story is an interesting one. If you could tell us a little bit, indeed, how a young woman from Iraq navigated through the world to become a Pritzker Prize winning architect to this moment at the Eli Broad Art Museum in Michigan State. What is the basic ingredients of this navigation?
Well, you know, as a child, I went to a nun school in Baghdad, which was a very progressive school, and the nuns really, they wanted the girls to do very well, in particular in sciences, and so on. There was one moment when we had the headmistress, kind of nun, went on a sabbatical, and I was in the year before, the final year in high school. We all went a bit wild, and somebody wanted recently, CNN actually wanted a photograph of me when I was a teenager, and because I left Iraq a long time ago, I could not find a picture as a teenager. But my niece had found this photograph of me pretending to be in a band at age 15. I dressed all the girls as the Beatles. And I don't know how I managed to make this dress, which had the Beatles all painted on it. And I was dancing and singing A Hard Day's Night, whatever it was. And so that school was very interesting. In Iraq at the time, it was not very uncommon to be an architect. I mean, many women in my generation wanted to become doctors, pharmacists, architects. It was not so unusual. And actually, and maybe things have changed now a lot, but at that time, it was in a way easier for women to be a professional because of the support from the family and the community and so on. So it was much easier because the children were not brought up as, just as a kind of nuclear family unit, but actually by so they had much more freedom, the women. So it wasn't very unusual to be an architect. But I decided to come to the UK, and I, and those of you know England or Britain, is that if you are seen as an eccentric, you're tolerated. So, you can do what you like because you're not really that serious. So I carried on for maybe 10, 15 years doing what I'm doing, and they tolerated me because I was just an eccentric or some sort of crazy person. It is only when you actually begin to show that there might be a possibility of doing the things you do in reality that then the enemy appears. That's when it's a problem. And I did come across hurdles, first being a foreigner, between brackets, and being a woman, not because the architecture was a man's world, but because everybody in the industry is male. And if I was a docile kind of girl, I could have maybe done better. Talking about unreasonable and impolite, and so on. I mean, I realized that somebody said to me, that I was rude, and I said, well, I'm not rude, and I realized that everybody is so over polite and kind of massaging everybody constantly that if you don't do that, you do come across as rude. Anyway, I've learned my lessons since those days. I'm much more diplomatic now. So that, my journey was in a way very difficult because of these things, and because there was another element, which is, that's why I said triple whammy, is because I was relentlessly uncompromising. I mean, I have to thank Patrik for kind of sometimes trying to behind my back, other cajole others. He once said to me, as I walk along, there are lots of dead bodies on the way, because I kind of like cut them off or whatever I do to them. No, but I think it was really important that someone else, comes in who can see that there is a window to do things differently, and many of the others who were with me, and the others, but I would say particularly Patrik. So to those who've known me 20 years ago, I've become very nice.
I think we can look forward to the art of being uncompromising. This, by the way, is Patrik Schumacher. Zaha has left. I think this trait of being uncompromising is something that is shared by Eli Broad as well. Correct, yes. As is the commitment of both of these great people to education. Eli, in your book, you speak about your Uncle Joseph, who started a school in Palestine, and you yourself speak of your gratitude to Michigan State University for your education. And we know that your philanthropy is extending very personally to deep education needs in the state of Detroit. Can you tell us a bit about your commitment to education?
When I left the world of commerce, can you hear me okay?
Yep.
12 years ago, I said, what is the biggest problem facing this country? And after visiting China, India, Japan, Korea, and certain northern European nations, I said, our biggest problem is K-12 education. So we've set out to see what we could do to fix what I consider a broken system. I've been working at that for 12 years, including here in the state of Michigan, where with Governor Snyder we created the Education Achievement Authority to take the worst performing schools of the Detroit public school system, which only has a 28% graduation rate, take those 15 worst performing schools and start from scratch. Give them a 210-day school year versus 175 days, 7.5 hours a day, technology, leave all the work rules and other things behind. We just started a month and a half ago with almost 11,000 students. So it's one of the many things we're doing across America.
Zaha, you yourself have taught at Harvard, the University of Illinois, Yale, and several places. And you just mentioned to us this morning that despite your schedule, you continue a commitment to teaching and education. Why is this so important to you?
I think my career would have been very different if I did not go to a particular school in London called the Architectural Association, the AA, not Alcoholics Anonymous. I think that school was a fantastic school. It still is a great school, but at the time, it was an amazing place with a great chairman. He was not dissimilar to the head nun in Baghdad. They were very similar in the sense they really believed in women, and so that school was very unique, and without it, I would have not discovered the many things I did, and I taught there for 10 years after, and it was extremely rewarding to see how not that kids can learn, but how their personalities would change Well, not always to the better, but most of the time, it was really wonderful to watch. And I think if you can do that as a teacher, you can open the door a tiny bit, not all the way, to show what there is on the other side. And, I don't want to say enlighten, but encourage them. Because I actually think any achievement is because people can become more confident. And education gives you confidence to make decisions which are sometimes difficult, but also makes you make the next step. And apart from it teaches you a trade or a skill, these are all come with education or whatever it may be. But it gives you the confidence to take on these other things. And that's why I believe in it. And I teach in Vienna all the time. I teach in American schools every few years. Patrik is a very committed teacher. And so I think it's very critical that we contribute. Some people must understand. They think, well, maybe because you can get fresh ideas through the students. It's not the case. You do, but I think it's reciprocity between the student and the teacher, and together you can really. It's like any. This investigation is carried through all the way, and I really believe that in my own practice that it is, in a sense, very important to carry on that research. Mm-hmm. And the courage, the encouragement I had and the support I had from the student body, and early in my career, I mean, the students were always beaten up by other professors saying, don't look at that stuff, it's going to happen, never going to happen, it doesn't have columns, it doesn't have breaks, it doesn't have this and doesn't have that. But students always came to work with me, and they came to the AA to study with me, and they come down to Austria, and I think that was an incredible support. And when you see these kids putting everything on the line, spending hours and hours working on their own stuff just because they want to do better. I mean, it's a very exciting and rewarding thing to do.
That's amazing and very important for us to hear at the university. Eli, let's talk about this building a bit and how this project happened. I'm just thinking as Zaha is speaking about people talking about brick and being afraid of the future, and here you are as a philanthropist, a collector of contemporary art, and how you encourage university to create something contemporary. And then your philanthropy and your vision met the vision of President Simon, both of you looking into the 21st century deeply. How did this happen for you, that you decided that what you really wanted for your alma mater was a contemporary art museum?
Well, I married three things that I'm passionate about: education, art, and architecture. And it started with President Simon. And we talked about perhaps we should expand the Kresge Art Museum, which has a rather constrained site. We looked at that. And the President and I decided, maybe we could find a great site. And the President showed me a building here on Grand Avenue and said, you know what, this building has got to come down. It's got structural problems and so on. What do you think of this site? And I said, I couldn't think of a better site because it not only serves the university, but faces the city of East Lansing and welcomes people from Grand Avenue and from the campus. So that's how it came into being. And then, of course, we had the architectural competition. As I mentioned earlier, the President started out thinking about red brick architecture, respecting it, and we all respect it. But at the end of the day, she urged a jury to go ahead with the most innovative, exciting design, and that's why we're here today. So thank you, President Simon.
Indeed. Let's talk a bit about this building. When we go into this building, what I always tell people is that for museums, there's often, when you walk into the great museums like the Metropolitan, the Detroit Institute of the Arts, all of whom are enhancing their contemporary programs. Traditionally, museums, when you experience them, you experience a certain solemnity, a certain reverence, a certain quiet, actually. And here, when you come into this building, what you feel is a dynamism. I like to think of this building as a strong, amazing gust of wind coming from the east and to the west and being stopped by this western gaping, welcoming set of windows. And then in the middle, the synergy collides and you have this amazing center for the contemporary. Can you tell us something about your inspiration for this building and what your understanding of the presence that it has here on this particular piece of land, on this particular site in 2012?
Well, we knew that the site was, it's like a crossroads, and that, and the site, the building is not very big, so we thought of kind of almost like a jewel box, and then the louvering, the trapezoidal spaces would kind of almost explode that site, would make it much bigger. And I think these kind of perspectival, let's say, tricks do work. They do make space stretch. So you stretch beyond the boundary of the building. And that was the original idea. And then we thought about how one can do kind of really interesting exterior, because we were doing at the time also this kind of organic morphology, and then this had to be much more constrained in the sense. But what could the exterior be? How would that be? How do you energize space through light or reflection of light and so on? And that's how these kind of ideas came out. And maybe Patrik would like to.
Yes, I think it's important to realize, in general, we're saying the built environment is an interface of communication, which gathers and orders audiences into particular communicative situations. And I think the art communication is a very particular communication. So the building has to really be like what the art institution is, confronting reality with potentials, with other realities. And that's part of this kind of unreasonableness, which it has to have, and persisting in this, but with the idea of finding new avenues of high performance and higher forms of rationality and reasonableness. But for that to do that, you first of all have a challenge, and that's what this symbolizes and signifies. It is first of all initially strange, bizarre, stimulating, a different country invites you in, but then we have worked through, because we've been working on these new repertoires of architecture for 25 years, that there is an unsuspected new way of functioning. And what you said, this is a high-performing venue, which is a machine to display, to communicate, and not that irrationality which is initially perhaps symbolized. So I think that we love that tension of having something stimulating, unusual, seemingly bizarre, but then things fall into place and make sense because the kind of porosity, transparency, the way the spaces modulate in scale but yet fit into kind of coherent volume, the way the courtyard is one more of these trapezoidal rooms, so there's a variation of rooms building up. And then on the inside, you're confronted with raw unreasonableness, with kind of raw potential yet to be worked through and traced out and selected from. Because I think the difference between art and architecture is architecture as in its avant-garde state, we need this platform of the art, of that freewheeling, brainstorming space, and we going into galleries to do experiments. But at the same time, we need to select out and filter out, and this is a mature product of which kind of represents 20 years of working through initial radical intuitions which Zaha had. For instance, this idea of distortion, of perspectival distortion applied not to an orthogonal geometry to represent in the perspective, but to say these techniques of projection can be used to create new realities. Is an amazing, irrational, surreal move, which now every student of architecture has as an habitual option. So the repertoire of working and manipulating space in this fashion is now kind of commonplace, and we've created a kind of masterpiece which uses these techniques. And we would have to go I have to take you through the building to make sense, but I think you feel intuitively, you trust this building once you move through it, because everything works, falls into place, makes up connections. So I invite you to think of that as a kind of high-performance machine.
Thank you, we do. I also think, Eli, you have created a new chic word. Unreasonable is really now the mantra for all of us. I'd like to conclude, Eli, with you here. You say in your book, and this is something for all of us to hear, that what you give can change the world. And we are here celebrating with this building your devotion, yours and Edie's devotion to philanthropy. And I take this at your word that you don't have to be rich to give, as you say. Can you speak to this to all of us who are present here, that this idea, this notion, this way of life of giving is something that all of us can do, and is something that you have particularly devoted yourself to. But we all can do it. You believe that?
I do believe it. It's, when I speak about philanthropy, it's not charity. Charity is just writing checks. Yes, we did that also, and we still do. But philanthropy is really getting involved, spending your time, your energy, using the knowledge and experience you have to help others, to help institutions, whether it's a university, a school, a hospital, community center, or what have you. So all of us have something to offer. And it's not just a question of financial resources, it's a question of being willing to spend your time, your energy, and your passion to make things better, to create things that don't exist. And once we do all of that, we feel good about ourselves and we move forward. And I, for one, am never satisfied. So once we accomplish one thing, we say, what are we going to do next to make this world a better place? And I think everyone should start thinking that way.
I think if there is a through line here, it is a through line of vision. A vision based in art and philanthropy that brings to this community and to the larger world a building that is so open, that is so integrated to the life of the street, to the life of this campus. A building that says, please come, please join us, please help us, educate all of us. We all need education in these ways. So thank you so much for being here. Thank you for celebrating this day with us. Praise to you both, to you all. Thank you so much.
Thank you.